you can fill up all of the holes at once with n-gons and then quickly be able to one-click select them and deal with them individually very, very quickly. Hi guys, my name is Baradante, and welcome back to Neonate's horror game characters creation process. In the last episode, I showed you guys my thoughts on how I quickly and as automatically as possible do retopology of my characters based on which part of the mesh is supposed to do what. Mostly it was about combining the quad remeshers plugin results that creates this kind of quad flow looking meshes with pretty much decimate looking things. And all of this is also supported greatly by this shrink wrap modifier that projects all the details onto the original sculpt. So we bring some of the detail back right here, especially when we're adding any kind of changes. So this is really cool. And these are so far the final remeshed models that I'm going to be using for the animation. But before we start with the rigging, let me show you guys real quick how I went through with finalizing and actually stitching together different types of retopology into one mesh. So this right here is the most intense example because it's pretty chaotically combining this decimated look for stuff where we want to see some cool gritty details of this mesh with a lot of this quad remesher kind of looking things. By the way, I kind of forgot on this one, I may probably remove some of the unnecessary loops in the middle of the limbs, which is something I was doing on other characters. Like you guys can see in here, there's a lot of skipping. It's not even because we don't need necessarily all these loops. I'll probably do the same thing in here as well a little bit. Like legs is one of those things where you really don't need all that much, so I'll just control delete a bunch of these, and really I don't think the mesh will look necessarily worse after I do something like this. In fact, many experienced game developers, if anyone's watching, are probably relieved to see at least some kind of lowering of vertex count on these super dense meshes. But again, as I said, these are super high quality, maybe cutscene level meshes, you know? Also, you always have to think about what about future proofing of your game, you know? What if in the future there will be some kind of nanite for characters or something like that? When the work is done on all the characters and the whole project, going back to something that you've done many years ago will be probably quite a bummer. It would be best to just have high quality meshes ready. Well, high quality, high detail. But yeah, I feel like at certain point, with the cutscenes, I'll definitely have a good use of these kind of meshes, you know, showing models as good as possible, really for close-ups. This is a horror game, you know, I'll be doing close-ups. I'm generally if I do say so myself, I'm kind of good with, you know, video editing, presenting stuff in a cool way with changing shots in a cinematic way and all that. So yeah, I'm really I'm looking at these guys and I'm already seeing what kind of shots I'll be pulling with them. So yeah, I definitely don't think all this level of detail that we're working on right now will be useless. Very much not useless. I'll definitely be doing a lot of cool exposition on these guys or something like that. So yeah, around the knees I'll just keep it as is probably. But in here where the curvature is going kind of flat, this is not introducing any new detail. Very long legs, a lot of unnecessary loops. In here we might need these loops to bend things in a pretty way. And yeah, I like to not necessarily go perfectly every other one, you know, to have even distances. Sometimes it's just looking better to have uneven ones, you know, to see a curvature that's oh, it's not just flat and low poly. It's just in here it's kind of straight, and then it's curving where it needs to curve. So some irregularity in these distances between the angles, whatever, the loops, is kind of a cool thing when you make a decision. But in here so far is going exactly I would skip both of these really, and these are kind of needed. This one seems to be pretty flat, this one, and this one is, but it's already a knee, so better not. Okay, I feel like we need something in here. All right, this seems more reasonable. Now on the arms, definitely way too much stuff as well. So I'll go through and do the same thing. I assume this would be an elbow somewhere in there. That's actually it. So I'll delete these guys. Oh, I think, yeah, again, kind of forget to check a lot of the times if it's an elbow or not. How do you deselect a loop? So yeah, something like that. I think I've just gotten rid of like a couple of thousands of polygons. I don't remember, but it's quite a difference, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, the whole stitching of polygons, right? That's what I actually wanted to tell you guys about. This is really cool. When I was starting with that, I felt like, oh, it's gonna be, you know, kind of a mess. Like, how do you wrap your head around having two very different meshes? Like here I have these work in progress meshes, and like you have like, this is the part I want to stitch in, this is the part, and like this is looking like a mess, you know. How do you? So two important commands: bridge and fill, but there are several types of fill in Blender, and I need the one that's, if you hit Control F, you have this face menu here, and this fill. So it's like face fill. And this one is cool. It's pretty much like it's filling up any hole. So generally, like if we have quite a messy hole like this, what we do is, like at first we can of course select, you know, all the loops, like the loop of this hole and the loop of that hole, and then just make a bridge. But it might go a bit messy because this is quite a complex shape. It might not figure out the best way how to connect things. And by the way, selecting an island like this is gonna be hard in Blender because it's not, you can't like just select border. There is something about a boundary loop, but it's like it needs an actual loop. And when it's all kinds of messy polygons, it doesn't define it as a loop, so it's not gonna select it. So what you actually can do is, I think Shift G, yeah, select similar. It's also in the select section here, select similar. And you select by amount of faces around an edge. Maybe other stuff would also work, I'm not sure, but this one works because it means like it needs only one face next to it, because the other face is gone. Hence, it's a border edge, right? So this way we selected all the edges, which is something that really saved me a lot of time when I discovered it. So now we just need to deselect what we don't need, which is a much faster thing to do. So back here, now we have everything for the bridge selected, and I would hit Control B, and yeah, this is where it's gonna be a problem. Otherwise, it's done quite a good job. But in here, it's gonna be a problem because, you know, it's not necessarily obvious to the algorithm that, like, this is the closest one, but then this is the closest one, but this one can be closest to something else or something like that. That's why it becomes like a mess. Too complex of a curvature. So in order to go around it, what I do is I break this super long noodle of a canyon into smaller bits, and I select just some polygons and just bridge them like this. Shift B everywhere. Also, I would just delete this polygon right here, and I would just keep going with that Shift B command. Not that frequently at all. This is not what I mean at all. But yeah, in here I would just fill it like this. I don't know, like it really maybe it would be enough to just, you know, divide it into two. So just create like Shift B here, and just solve this one complex issue, right? But yeah, at this point, what you do next is you select again our thing with Shift G, and right, you can not just deselect what you don't need, but you can Control Shift, click and drag, and only leave this selected. And now Shift B won't work because it's not a bridge anymore. You're just kind of filling the hole. But again, we're using this from this menu, it's fill. This Shift F command is something I assigned myself. So now I just hit Shift B, and it's creating this kind of triangulated look. It's different from another type of fill that's just F on the keyboard. That one just creates a huge n-gon for you to, decide what it should be yourself. But Shift B that I assigned now does this. There are also other types. If you go into this Control F mode, there's grid fill, but this thing, it doesn't work like a bridge at all. It needs like round normal hole to create an actual grid inside, which is cool and all, but this is not the situation where we need that. Shift F is exactly what we need. This is also a great way to control, usually bridge command is doing a great job, but maybe you want to make sure that, these two would be connected instead of these two being connected or something like that, So you can go ahead and do that manually at first, and also notice that this polygon doesn't have to exist at all in here. And yeah, just do a few of Shift B's like this. And yeah, now I'll just select a handful of polygons, hit this amount of faces command. All the holes are now selected, and I would hit Shift F right now, but I think when they're like opposite, it might cause this kind of problem. It would for some reason connect very different things. But yeah, it seems like it's best to go one hole at a time because it tends to create some kind of unwanted bridges between holes if you select more than one. So yeah, just Shift F on each hole, Shift F, Shift F, and so on. So maybe there is a bit of a quicker, clever way to somehow go about it, to just, fill up these holes all together without creating some stupid bridges between them. So later I did find a bit of a better way, or a combination of tools to do it. So first of all, to break the canyon apart, when we select two things, we can just hit F. That's actually working exactly like bridge if you're just connecting two edges. Another thing is to quicker select all of the border edges, you just add non-manifold selection to your quick menu that's available using the Q shortcut. And also you can find it right here, all by trait, non-manifold. And in here you can specifically define that you want boundaries, but you don't have to do that. Usually you will select exactly the borders. So yeah, after breaking apart a few of the zones like this in all the canyons, to make sure it doesn't go like 360 degrees or something, like some curvature is fine, but not too much. And maybe if you're having something that you yourself are not sure how exactly you would break it apart, maybe just, go ahead and do it yourself a little bit, like this, and like this. So at this point we have more or less normal bits like this. Now I select non-manifold and I hit F to just fill them with n-gons. And what's interesting with this, now I can select each one of them and hit Control T to triangulate. So that's kind of faster. Or another command you can use here is Shift F, the one that's like the fill mode from Control F menu that fills with triangles, but you notice it will actually make all the polygons inverted because it thinks it's like underneath the n-gon. So what I would do right now, I would actually invert the normals, flip normals, and now it all will be fine, after which I select the old n-gon, which is still here, and I just remove it. But yeah, just wanted to point out that there are maybe quicker ways of setting things up. At least you can fill up all of the holes at once with n-gons and then quickly be able to one-click select them and deal with them individually very, very quickly. So that's kind of cool. After this, of course, we want to go ahead and like shade smooth. So yeah, we have this, and while I don't have the original sculpt like perfectly placed under this model right here, but what I would also do is I would quickly go to the sculpt mode and real quick like smooth out the borders of stitching so they would become more relaxed and nicely connected. But of course, right now I'm ruining the shape of everything, and with shrink wrap, it would all still stick to the surface, acting much more like not smooth but relax. So right here, if I would do that, I'm still following the shape because of the shrink wrapping, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you don't want to do it inside of this decimate area because decimate does exactly that perfect positioning of the remaining vertices to have all the angles and corners exactly at the places where they are the most needed to show that higher precision geometry. So make sure to keep it. Like all these kind of spiky things in here, they all totally make sense because the original sculpt has like all this stuff. When normals will be projected, these little spikes will work just right to support their geometry a little bit and show a little bumps. So that'll be pretty cool. And yeah, I went ahead and stitched together like the top of this mushroom is quad remesher and the bottom is just decimate. And you guys can see how it's working pretty well. Really, the stitching is doing a pretty good job. The only thing is, I think I didn't select exactly the right topology at the very border. Like, I would like much more if it would be all decimated here. But it wasn't. I selected a bit too much of the quad remesher result, and it's too smooth, and I liked the way the edges are when they're like more precise. So what I actually did is I went into sculpt mode, chose this simplify brush, turned on Dentopo mode, and sort of went through this area but with a smaller density, kind of like this or something, and introduced this, but with the shrink wrap modifier enabled. Right now it's gone because the sculpt is not here. But yeah, this is the way I did it. And yeah, by the way, shrink wrap doesn't work in real time while you're doing this remeshing with the simplify brush. It literally says that it's not supported in Dentopo. But then when you just leave the sculpting mode, it will shrink wrap. So you will see all the details showing through. It's not as awesome as what actual decimate does, but you're just able to quickly add, you know, more of a dense grid of polygons where you kind of just want to show more curvature in a certain place. I shouldn't go too crazy with that, of course, because it's not the smartest and quite quickly growing amount of polygons when you're doing stuff with this brush. And yeah, after doing that, you have everything triangulated, which is, for games as far as I know, it's a good idea to triangulate everything, but so far we're not particularly in the game, so what I do is I hit Control F command, and then here is trees to quads, only I think everything needs to be selected, and boom, we're back to quads. And by the way, we're back to quads even in the decimated area, which is something I didn't realize before. I hope that's okay. I mean, I think it is. I wonder if it's giving some extra flexibility, like what if it's quadrified now and I'll be smoothing it, it will create a certain better flow of things? Like, all of this is very interesting, but we want to move on to rigging. So real quick, in here I also went around this edge with a simplify brush because I didn't even have the decimate version of this mesh. And yeah, this guy was also a big deal of stitching in this topology of from decimate. That's pretty much the only place I added because I wanted it to look the most gross and kind of detailed there. By the way, when you're selecting the polygons you want to introduce, like cut out and put in here, it's best to use like this brush with different radiuses and whatever, just selecting it like this. And if you like skipped something, especially, you know, when it's a complex shape at a different angle, there will be holes, you just Control plus a couple of times and then go back, and now the holes are gone. And yeah, you just then stitch it in the way it goes. So yeah, this is how we ended up here with our awesome guys. Now, I have quite a few of things to learn about using AutoRig Pro,